GNX is one of the best albums to come out this year and the crown jewel in Kendrick Lamar's 2024. Songs like Luther, TV Off, and the chart-topping Squabble Up are taking over the internet and pop culture over the last month, and one might think that Kendrick Lamar's plan heading into the Super Bowl would be to chill out for a few months before not only performing on the biggest stage of America, but also embarking on a tour that will keep him occupied for most of 2025. However, Kendrick Lamar's Gemini theory would say otherwise, which might make you wonder, what is the Gemini theory? And well, allow me to explain. In Greek mythology, Gemini is associated with the myth of Castor and Pollux, a pair of twins with different fathers. Pollux's father is Zeus, while Castor's dad is Tyndareus. The difference in parents would make one immortal and one mortal. Eventually, one of them would die, being Castor, and Pollux begged his father to give Castor immortality, which was accomplished through uniting them in heaven. It is because of this story that Geminis are considered to have a split personality in the most traditional sense of having a Gemini personality. And though to some that might be nothing more than just astrology, for Kendrick Lamar in his career, it's a way of living. As throughout his entire career, the Kendrick Lamar story has been a cycle of conflicting environment and philosophies which shaped the man we know today. And perhaps the first real example of said clash of elements comes in the way of Kendrick Lamar's second studio album, Good Kid, Mad City.
Man down, where you from?
Though Section 80 also had themes of conflicting lifestyles and could be considered an example of the Gemini theory, I would like to begin with Good Kid, Mad City, as it is the simplest one to get into, mainly because it doesn't take a lot to understand that this is a conflicting environment, just from the album title alone, Good Kid, Mad City. As the relatively good and respectable Kendrick Lamar finds himself in situations out of his elements, whether it be brought through the influence of those around him or the influence of the environment that is Compton, California. This can be seen mostly through the overarching story of Good Kid, Mad City, which sees Kendrick Lamar get jumped not because he was putting himself in a bad position, but because he was chasing a girl he liked. It is in following the aftermath of this event that the album is built around, and the record that begins Kendrick Lamar's trend of presenting duality. A trend that would continue as we headed into To Pimp a Butterfly. Once more, it does not take an in-depth understanding of the content within to understand the duality of pimping a butterfly. Somewhat of an oxymoron and a clashing of ideals, as pimping is just opposed with the innocence of butterflies, and even caterpillars in its initial conception. However, I feel like this record presents a much better case for the duality of Kendrick Lamar in tracks like You and I. You is this song where Kendrick Lamar hates himself for being famous. He talks about the struggles that he's gone through in the pursuit of fame, how it makes him feel less human and less of a good person. While on the other hand, you have I, a song that is all about loving oneself. And I love myself. The world is a ghetto, big guns. Fighting through the urges of wanting to end it all and embracing who you are. Is that Gemini personality that we talk about, or feeling the dread of hating oneself as well as the euphoria of loving the same person. Kendrick's career could best be defined as one that splits into two, something that would be a creative building block for the release of his next record, Damn.
Wicked or weakness, you gotta see this.
Released in 2017, Damn follows an already popular Kendrick Lamar, and though some may see his situation as a blessing, there was also some who might go as far as to say that Kendrick Lamar was in damnation.
I'm willing to die for this shit. I done cried.
As introspective as Kendrick Lamar was per usual, his fourth studio album would see Kendrick Lamar tackling duality once more in several ways.
Love and lust.
Though there was no juxtaposition put forward in the title of the record, the paradox of a human that is Kendrick Lamar would be the building block in which Damn builds. There's this skit in Triple X where he does a speech on gun control and how important that is, despite the fact that he spends the whole song leading up to that talking about how he'd resort to violence if violence came to him. Tracks like Humble, where he's talking about being humble but he's talking to himself, but it could also be perceived as him talking to rappers or his fans even. And perhaps the best example of duality that this record brings is the one where Kendrick Lamar tells the story of two strangers in random predicaments. The two men that would arguably be the most influential in his career and life as Kendrick Lamar, his dad and his eventual boss and top dog. However, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Damn is also a double record in a way, as it is distinct in the fact that it can be played forward and you get a story, and you can play backwards and you get a whole different story. It's reminiscent of those poems poems where you can read them like from the top down and from down up. And if that doesn't showcase duality, then I don't know what does. Of course, though, Damn was Kendrick Lamar's last album for about 5 years. In his return with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers carried many themes, issues that tackle generational trauma, whether it be through your mom or your dad, the importance of therapy. But it also took a look into Kendrick Lamar, the artist, versus Kendrick Lamar, the person. The artist, Kendrick Lamar, was this guy that was slated to save hip-hop. And it wasn't just fans saying it. It wasn't even just reporters saying it. It was the hip-hop legends that Kendrick Lamar looked up to themselves saying it. However, between tours, press runs, music video shooting, recording, days on the road, so on and so on, the divide broke down both of Kendrick's sides. Years of ignoring his mental health and personal strength led to Kendrick Lamar, the artist, stepping away for 5 years. And when he did return, it was time for him to address that no longer could he sacrifice himself as a person for the sake of Kendrick Lamar, the artist. And now the year is 2024, and as we inch closer to 2025, we stand in the middle of Kendrick Lamar's GNX era, an album that definitely has its themes, but I don't think duality is one of them so far. I guess there is this thing where he keeps talking about being reincarnated, and that can be seen as the duality theme for this record, but personally, I think this is just one half of what is the entirety of the project. And I'm not saying that Kendrick Lamar is coming out with a brand new record immediately, but there's definitely a deluxe on the horizon. A deluxe that, if I had to guess, would showcase more of that duality that Kendrick Lamar always brings. It is his Gemini nature after all, and even though I'm not the biggest astrology type of guy, it's clear that Kendrick Lamar is, or at the very least that he really identifies with this story of being a Gemini. And as the Super Bowl performance gets closer and closer, I have no doubt in saying that Kendrick Lamar is not finished. But you might say, if Kendrick Lamar is truly not finished, why hasn't he already released the deluxe or the new album? Which is a good question, but I think you need to look at the calendar and look at what month it is and look at what the music rotation is when it's December. GNX is definitely an album that should have more than one #1 hit, but because it's getting blocked out by Mariah Carey and Last Christmas and whatever else is being played right now, the only #1 hit that GNX has so far is Squabble Up. And considering that music at the end of the day is a business, it's kind of hard to justify releasing an album in the middle of December. But if you ask me, January looks like the month for this to happen. I mean, think about it like this. January is usually a month where artists don't really release anything. And considering Kendrick Lamar is headlining the Super Bowl in February, it would almost make all the sense in the world for either a GNX Deluxe or a brand new Kendrick Lamar album to release in January. And that is thanks to the Gemini theory. That wraps it up. I think I realized this Gemini thing like last week, and I really wanted to make a video about it. Do I think GNX is gonna get a deluxe? I am 50-50 on it, but I don't think, like, even if it gets one, I don't think it will necessarily like add towards this Gemini theory thing. I just really wanted to talk about like, oh, look at the duality of Kendrick Lamar throughout his whole career. And I thought this was the best way to do that. But with that being said, shout out to Jay Dilla, shout out to God, shout out to y'all, and most importantly, shout out to me. And yeah,